We're very lucky today to have Dr Eamonn Mathieson here with us, Matt, aren't we?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Doctor, so much for coming.
Thank you.
Now, Dr Mathieson is one of the co-writers of the letter that went ballistic about 2 weeks ago. I had it sent to me by about 40 or 50 different people. And, you know, it's created a lot of momentum in our communities. We're just so thankful to have doctors speak out because, you know, I can say all these different things, but it doesn't mean anything. I'm not a doctor, you know, so thank you so much, firstly, I'd like to say.
Thank you.
And secondly, it's had over, 500 signatures now from doctors, and so it's gone a lot faster than I expect you would have imagined. And Dr Mathieson has told me that their website came down because it just had such an overwhelming result, and they've got a new website coming up, which is going to be COVID Medical Network, and it's going to be open to nurses and other people in the medical field, so just keep an eye on that. It did not get taken down. They chose to take it down, which is a good thing. And yeah, how do you feel about the doctor's letter, Matt?
Well, the reaction's been interesting, isn't it? But in the other countries, I mean, just earlier you were saying to me that in the US and other areas, the response wasn't quite so warm. But here it feels like we were waiting for you guys to come out with this.
Yeah, it's a good point, because I think it seemed to be the time was right. I think that the issue of extending the state of emergency powers brought that to the fore. I think Australians are really quite, tough people, and they'll put up with a lot, particularly when they're doing it for others. And it got to that point where I don't think they really trusted that this was, the harm that was being caused. They couldn't see that this was worth the effort of what was being achieved from it. And so, yeah, overseas, the media really, it was extraordinary censorship that came down on the guys in the US and also, across the world. So we were partly expecting the same sort of thing to happen, and we were very surprised, astonished really that it didn't, and it was actually an overwhelming positive. I think it was just about the timing. People were ready to hear it.
Well, I think they wanted to hear it because we've been told over and over from our Premier, we must follow the data, we must follow the experts. And okay, that to me sounds like a good thing, that sounds rational, but then as soon as we start to hear some other experts come out, many of you now, over 500 people saying, yes, there are some issues here. Yeah. Dan is now not, I don't understand what's going on here.
Well, yeah, I think there was the illusion of a unanimous, position by all doctors. I think that was, in a sense, an illusion, and that was the shield behind which they made many of the decisions in the lockdown measures to do that. And so you do mention the experts. It's interesting. We don't really know who they are, and the part of the problem of this process is that it isn't really very open. There are concerns about not having a broad multidisciplinary approach and not having an open disclosure approach, so that everyone can trust the decisions and trust who is making them and why they're making them. So there are many people behind the scenes that disagree with the narrative and the approach and the measures taken, and many doctors have contacted me directly to congratulate us for standing up for this, that they totally agreed. But many of them expressed the fear and concern that there could be some repercussions for them professionally, and that some are reluctant to put their names to things, which says something also about the culture, both in healthcare and perhaps politically, that there is a fear of standing up about this. And we were told, gee, you've been so courageous. And I'm thinking, well, not really. We just said something that's really quite obvious and really straightforward, and what we know to be true, and what we are really concerned about. It's not really courageous, but there hasn't been any negative consequences yet. But yet there hasn't even been a response so far from the Premier, which is kind of amusing.
It's interesting talking about the truth. I mean, have you seen that saying? It's when truth becomes a revolutionary act or something. Have you seen that quote somewhere? No. Times are dangerous when telling the truth becomes a revolutionary act.
Or a dangerous or courageous thing to do. Yeah, it's very strange.
But, in America, I know that the doctors were censored a lot, but a lot of the government were behind them as well, actually. But Daniel Andrews hasn't even, acknowledged this letter. Has he?
Well, I imagine
Not as far as we know.
I imagine it would have really
It's 2
perturbed
weeks
him because
ago.
he's really set up this thing where we have to only trust his health experts.
Yeah.
From what I hear, it's very difficult to get a conference with Brett Sutton from
Yeah.
the medical community.
Well, yeah, this is, it appears to be somewhat dysfunctional. I don't really know, but from what people are saying, I mean, it's a very difficult situation that they're in. People are acting in very strange ways. People tell me every day about their interactions with people that they pass in the street and things that are odd. So in this culture of fear and, coercion and things, and uncertainty, where emotion seems to sort of override reason, as I said, I think on one of the TV programs, it's probably a similar phenomenon or a similar culture is caught on in the highest levels of decision making. So I don't know. Usually in medicine, when there is a challenge to the data or the decision making, most doctors would be open to listening to that, other perspectives and other criticisms. And we take that on board because we all know we don't know everything,
Sure.
and we take the opinions or the expertise of others on board, and we think that broadening that out, perhaps to involve people who have more of a clinical exposure to the realities of what's happening, and who are familiar with all of the other medical conditions that still exist, that still continue in our community, that need to be addressed and are falling further and further behind with each day and each week. And this is the alarming thing that we're concerned about, is creating probably Victoria's worst ever public health crisis.
Right. Well, we would definitely like to know which experts are, giving Dan advice. And I know for a fact I'd want you on that panel, but we'll try and make.
No. I'm just an anaesthetist who is aware of the information and liaises with. But I liaise with others, and I am very concerned about the. What's happening out there in the community, and no one seems to be listening to it. We just our little website, we seem to be an avenue for people to voice their concerns. We've had so many stories that have poured through the website, telling their circumstances, and they're really quite harrowing to read.
And we can't wait to see what you do with that, because I know you're going to do something with it. Now I have one more question about.
Sorry.
No, I have one more question. If you did, I asked you about what it would be like to be Daniel Andrews' advisor on this, but I like asking this question. If you had 30 seconds or 45 seconds of Daniel Andrews' undivided attention, what would you say to him?
I'd say he needs to listen to the doctors who are actually out there at the coalface on the ground, seeing what's actually happening, seeing the actual implications of these lockdown measures. Yeah. I would also ask him to broaden his exposure to experts. We have access now to some of the leading analysts in the world who can tell you that a picture and can present it to you. All of the information is coming out to give people a more reassuring understanding of what's going on and not operate out of fear. This is not how medicine's done. I think I explained that everything that seems to be done out of the decision-making offices is contrary to the basic principles of good medicine. So we don't terrorize our patients. We give them the real information and in perspective, and are always reassuring. That doesn't seem to be occurring. And we listen to our colleagues, and we're humble. And we should be humble in terms of facing particularly difficult conditions and things that no one person or one little group can sort of fathom, because this is a massive problem, mostly due to the measures taken to manage a situation which all of the evidence is pointing towards is far less significant than was initially thought to be.
Well, Dr. Kendrick from last week said, half of the coronavirus deaths in England were actually caused from the reaction to coronavirus, not the coronavirus itself, or that you're more likely to die in a car accident if you're under 25 than you are to die from coronavirus. So these facts are coming out.
Yes.
So, look, I just wanted to say as well to you guys that next week, we're actually going to do a special on, the child psychology behind it, which I think is really important because there's so many parents out there homeschooling and they don't really know what the effects are going to be. So we're going to talk about that next week. But Doctor or Matt, do you have anything more you'd like to add to this subject?
What can the public do to help? Or do we need to just sit back and watch what you guys are about to come out with?
Look, I think what we would like to do is provide an alternate source of information
Great.
that is open, that explains where this comes from, a place where people can go in their own time to have a look at the issues. There's probably 6 to 8 issues that are sort of supporting the narrative of these severe lockdowns, and each of them can be challenged and looked at with reason and in calmness at people's own time.
Great.
So we will make that available. The other thing is that people can show their support. So we will have a sign-up thing for both medical people, doctors, and as well as nurses and others who are all coming and telling us their stories, and they want people to know what they're seeing. Maternal and child healthcare nurses that are telling us that it's just horrific what they are seeing as a consequence of young mums going home and having no supports, and the impacts that that's going to have on even the youngest children, and the impacts that we can't even imagine at this point. But this is a very, very unusual circumstance. We've flipped our entire society and what we even consider to be good healthcare and what is good for our community for something that we have the evidence that we will present is far less significant than was portrayed in the hysteria which began 2020. So,
and that's good news.
That is great news.
That's good news. We should be celebrating that. Hey guys, it's not as bad as we thought. Why is everyone protecting the narrative that it's like going to just break the world apart?
And so the evidence.
Let's just accept that.
Yeah, the evidence is overwhelming. And the other thing that people can do, because I know I've read most of the stories. It's really quite harrowing what people are going through, and they found that it's an avenue that they can tell their stories through the website. That will be available, and they can then also say whether they're happy for their stories to be told further, so that others know that that there are a lot of people suffering out there, and that they're not alone, and maybe that their stories can actually help make a difference.
Definitely.
So people can listen.
Yes, and I think, a saying that I always say is a problem shared is a problem halved. So even if no one reads them ever, it still can be nice.
No,
so
they're being read and they're being responded to, I can tell you.
That's good to know. They're being read by doctors and their helpers. So, this show and my Reignite Democracy Australia will support everything that you're doing. And so everyone's going to get updates on the website when it's up. So don't freak out. It's coming back, I promise. And thank you so much for coming and speaking to us, Doctor. I really, really appreciate it, Dr.
Thanks,
Eamonn. And
Thanks
we'll
for
see you
having me
again,
on.
I'm sure.
Hopefully.
Okay.
Cheers. Thank you. Cheers. Thanks.